Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to showcase Judicator Holy Trail cooldown abusing Void Knight. This build was my season starter for patch 0.9 and has been an absolute blast the entire way. It has pushed easily to level 97 and has reached 300 corruption with little to no effort. A lot of people in the community do not enjoy the playstyle, but don't let that turn you away. I actually think this is one of the most underrated builds I have ever played, specifically because of how Last Epoch does its endgame. Unlike in PoE, Last Epoch does not require you to clear every monolith to achieve completion, as there is no such thing as map sustain. You just complete the objective and go to the next echo, which means you are incentivized to blast through echoes as fast as possible. One of the best ways of achieving this is playing a build that kills things on the way to the objective, which is what this build does. And of course, the bossing as well felt impeccable. Also, I wanted to take this time to talk about something real quick. So recently, Last Epoch has launched its online servers. The reason why this is important is there is still an offline version of the client, and there is no server authority on the offline portion of the game. And this means that offline footage is usually very untrustworthy, even if the user posting it means well. People can edit their files, which means you'll never truly know if there was any foul play at play. That's funny. The best way we know to combat this right now is to just simply look at the character UI. If the character has the account name above their name and the ping in the lower right of their skill bar, it means they're an online character. If they lack these features, it is an offline character. I just wanted to let you guys know, as I know there's a lot of new people in the community and you might not know of this little fact. And I highly suspect that this kind of thing will be abused in the future. If you enjoyed the content and want to see more like this, I'd suggest leaving a like on the video or subscribing to the channel, as that's the best way of letting me know you want more videos like this. Now, on to the actual build here. Holy Trail has been a meta skill since its inception. A skill that provides so much damage on such low investment will always be in the scene, whether it has an undesirable playstyle or not. The fact it is a damage over time spell on the class that gets access to volatile reversal with an enormous 240% increased damage taken modifier baked into its damage. You also get access to elemental damage over time, one of the strongest affixes in the entire game. It is a part of Javelin's tree that leaves a holy trail in its wake, which deals lightning damage and fire spell damage over time, and scales off of elemental, fire, spell, lightning, and damage over time sources. It is half fire, half lightning, meaning that adaptive damage is split between the two sources. So if you had a 40 adaptive spell damage, it would end up being 20 flat fire and 20 flat lightning. This is somewhat of a balancing mechanic to the skill, as if it was only one damage type, you could more easily stack penetration and more damage modifiers, which the skill does not need in the slightest. One of the popular versions of this build, the Paladin version, mainly focuses on using a one hand and a shield, or a two-handed staff as its damage delivery. This leads to a much higher numbers per javelin, but it makes the weakness of javelin even more apparent. It's clear. Now, like I said up in the intro, the game does not require screen-wide clear to play, much less than that actually. It's a lot more palpable to play a build with bad clear in Last Epoch versus a lot of other ARPGs on the market, since its rewards are heavily objective based. All of your damage being in a thin line that is on a cooldown is definitely an annoying problem to have, but that is why we're playing Void Knight. Void Knight has a lot of interesting interactions with Holy Trail, the first being its 40% chance to echo throwing attacks. Holy Trail is tied to Javelin, which is a throwing attack which does become echoed by VK's mechanics. This means that we get 40% more trails on average, and it leads to much better clear overall as you're spreading your trails all across the screen instead of being focused on one line. We also utilize a spear, the Judicator. The reason why is because of Pilum Assault. This node means that you can cast Javelin again, and it means we have two sources of Javelin, which means we have much more damage uptime and consistency while clearing. Our holy trails do less damage than paladins, but we get to apply significantly more trails on the ground, which leads to close to the same damage output. The final ace in the hole is Anomaly. Anomaly has a fat 30% cooldown recovery speed buff inside of it. This means on the top of our Judicator, our suffixes of our gloves and boots, we can easily reach 90% cooldown recovery speed for Javelin. Our lunge also benefits, as not only do we get most of this cooldown, we also get 30% cooldown recovery speed for movement skills inside the base Sentinel passive tree. This means that we bring our lunge and javelin from 4 seconds down to 2 seconds, or 1.6 seconds for my actual javelin. The double dipping on cooldown is the main reason why this version works and feels so strong to play, as you will always have access to a holy trail when you need to, unlike the paladin version, which usually needs to wait 2 seconds to have a trail. Obviously, you can run the Judicator on the paladin version, but it is nowhere near as efficient, as you lose access to the 30% cooldown on anomaly, and you don't benefit from all the huge adaptive damage modifiers while holding a shield that paladin has access to, so it's kind of One tip I'd like to note as well, while you're leveling this build into monoliths, one thing I want to suggest is to actually make sure that you swap to a staff for, of course, Lagan's boss fight in the campaign or in the monolith, because we cannot lunge to Lagan, meaning that there's no point in having lunge on our bar, so we can actually just swap to a staff with adaptive damage, deal a lot more damage with one singular trail, and make the fight a complete cakewalk. That's like a little tip that I found out while playing the build, so I'd heavily suggest doing so. But that's the only boss that you really have to do that with. With all that being said, let's go in game so I can talk about things more in detail. Alright, here we are in game with the build. One thing I want to let you guys know, there will not be a planner or planners in the description of videos anymore. That is mainly for 2 reasons. First off, a lot of people, they kind of click on the video, click on the planner, and then never watch the video. So that causes a lot of issues for me, specifically in the comment section. Also as well, there is no import features for planners. So what I've done is I'm going to be making a portion of my Discord dedicated to posting my planners so that you guys can come find them. And they will come with loot filters as well. So if you want to, of course, see the planner, come in the Discord, use it there. Thank you. Just wanted to let you guys know. Now, for the skill itself, let's talk about skills. Javelin here. We take 1 point travel into Mighty Delivery, then 1 point travel into Burning Strength, then 5 points in Spirit of the Thigh because more damage, 1 point into Holy Trail, 4 points into Pilgrimage because more damage, 1 point into Path of Judgment because this is the main reason why we can abuse utilizing a spear. There is a reason for that, is because we have like 700% healing effectiveness, and this makes up for the fact that we are utilizing a spear. A spear usually has no flat on it, especially when we're not using a Judicator. This means that we can actually scale this without needing a staff, which is amazing, as it, of course, opens up the option to use the spear, like I said. So this is the whole reason we can even play this build, and it even functions. So that's great. Then what you would do is go up travel for Go for the Legs, travel Keen Outlook, travel through Forceful Hurl, and then utilize Strategic Patience, which is 50% more damage for your entire Javelin. And then, of course, down here, we take 2 points travel into Serrated Javelin, then 3 points into Excellent Balance. Once you get a +2 Javelin, or you get the Judicator, it means that we can grab the last 2 nodes in Excellent Balance and bring Javelin all the way to a 0 mana cost, which makes the build feel significantly better. Now, of course, for Lunge here, we take 1 point travel into Warrior's Renewal, 2 points travel into Initiate's Onslaught, 1 point travel into Art of the Spear, 1 point travel into Deadly Stab, 1 point into Pilum Assault. We are going to be Javelining after we use a Spear. And it, of course, uses Javelin's mana cost, but it's a 0 mana cost. We require a Spear to utilize this, like I said. This is like the whole reason the build works, as well as much as this node as well. This is very important as well. Then we take 5 points into Dawn Charge. If you don't know the way Dawn Charge works, let's say we're missing like all of our life except for 1. If we use Lunge, we would gain 40% of that back. Since we have Lunge to such a ridiculous cooldown, about like 1.9 seconds of cooldown, this means every 2 seconds we gain 40% of our missing health every single time we use Lunge. That is pretty powerful. Who would have thought that that kind of a sustain is pretty broken when you bring the cooldown so low, right? So that's a wonderful feeling. This is probably one of the better nodes in the entire game, as it single-handedly can help you scale your HP to the moon. As you're scaling your HP to like 4K, 5K, this will scale along with it, which is very nice and wonderful. Then we take 4 points to Juggernaut Dash Travel, then 1 point to Unstoppable, so we are invulnerable while lunging, so that we can dash through Jurla beams, we can dash through anything that deals damage, and be just fine. And of course, we have one last point to grab. We can either grab Blade Stream or we can grab Holy Incursion. It is really up to you for that. Sigils. Sigils has a new setup. The reason why this is because we don't have volatile reversal mana abusing to get the same outcome that we used to. Also as well, the armor node on Sigils was nerfed to Endurance Threshold. Now normally this node is really good, but not good when you're a Void Knight abusing HP scaling and you have a lot of HP anyways. So all of this Endurance Threshold isn't really that valuable for us. That means that, of course, we can grab other things like the increased damage here. We can grab Invigorate as well, which gives us healing, which then of course gives us even more flat, and we get flat per sigil. You want to grab the sigil on kill, and if you really want to, you literally don't have to cast sigil a single time. The entire build. All you got to do is kill things, you'll get sigils as you kill things, and you'll be happy. Now for bosses, what you can do is you can preload and set up some sigils beforehand. Use all that excess mana that you have for sigils, as your skills are pretty mana neutral. So I have just a small bit of mana regen to facilitate this, which is great. Now Anomaly here. Anomaly is pretty strong because we take 1 point travel into Void Touch, 1 point into immediacy, so we're not actually sending our enemies in time, because that's a really annoying mechanic to deal with. 1 point into Time Bubble so that it stays around us. 5 points into Temporal Mastery to increase the duration by 100%. Then 1 point into Time Lord so that the bubble is cast on us, so that it stays on top of us so we get all the buffs. 2 points into Manipulation. Attack speed and cast speed is always wonderful with this build to make it feel better. Oh boy, thank you Kitten Kicker for looking for my builds here. 3 points into Swift Press for cooldown recovery speed here as well. This is very important, which is really nice. One of the main reasons we are up Void Knight is because of this node. Then 2 points of Time Eater for extra health leech, then a bunch of increased health leech, meaning that any damage over time health leech is doubled, which is wonderful. Well, actually it's tripled. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Anomaly. Then for Reversal, we're cooldown abusing with it. We're at 2.8 seconds. This means we have 100% uptime on Time Rifts and Harbinger of Dust on bosses, which means we deal a lot more damage, and everything else facilitates this. So Reversal hasn't really changed much since the last version of the build. Now, for gearing here, actually passives, let's talk about passives. This is my base Sentinel tree. We care about Armor Clad, Valiant Charge, Paladin. We only care about getting the sigils, but early on, when you're leveling, I would heavily suggest taking Valor and Holy Icon and Prayer, as this increased healing is great early on, as it gives you all the flat when you're spamming Lunge and all that with Javelin, which is great, but later on when you have better gear, you can grab other things. Void Knight here, 10 points in Abyssal Endurance for the res and the HP, really efficient point here. Increased damage on kill, because none of these other nodes will really help us, because this void damage does not really scale our damage much, as we're scaling elemental damage over time, which doesn't really work for any of this. Then 5 points to Doom Knight to scale all the way up to Renouncement for HP. Grab all the Echo nodes for 40% Echo. Grab a little bit of mana regen here. Eventually you can remove this if you feel like so your mana's fine. 10 points in Eternal Thorn for the HP Strong King. And then we put points into Dread finally so that we can move faster, as being able to move faster while in Monolith is very nice. Now for gearing, the only, what I would say, mandatory item eventually is the Judicator. You don't actually require the Judicator early on. You actually don't require the Judicator at all. It's just a really nice best in slot item we can get eventually, especially with legendary potential. The helmet here, I have increased skill damage with an Echo. This means that whenever we get that 40% chance to Echo, that deals more increased damage, which is great. This is a decent helmet. The amulet, damage over time, elemental damage over time. That damage over time should be healing effectiveness, but I don't have it. The chest, vitality, strength, health. Eventually, this is supposed to be a Titan heart with like 2 LP or something like that. That would be wonderful, but I'm just working with this so I can be chunky. Of course, ring, healing effectiveness. Now, if you have like fire damage or lightning damage percentage, it still works, but treat it as if it's half its value. So, for instance, we have 53% increased fire damage, but it feels like as though it's 25% increased damage, if that makes sense, right? Because it's half effective. Same thing with the other ring, healing effectiveness, damage over time. The belt, cooldown recovery speed, mana regen. This is supposed to be elemental damage over time. That would actually give us a lot of damage. You can also seal off cleanse as well. Atrophy, I got a 1 LP one with necrotic res. Pretty happy about that. Helps me with the reses in the future. Boots, these boots are pretty fantastic. Getting cooldown, exalted movement speed, all together in the same build. It's wonderful. Then the relic here, elemental damage over time, healing effectiveness, endurance, res. Of course, as well, make sure to get this on a Solarum base. There's a base that gives you 60% increased fire damage and 60% increased healing effectiveness, which is the preferred base. You could also get it on the res base if you want the reses. Now, of course, we run a Throne of Ambition. That is because we have a lot of armor because we're a Sentinel. So we want 40% more armor. We're about like 60% armor when we're at max stacks. Of course, healing effectiveness idols and then HP idols are best in slot, as it just gives us a bunch of increased HP and, of course, healing effectiveness. And then you can use 1x1s with healing effectiveness and res to fill in the blanks, which equal to almost one of these 2x2 ones, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it for all the gear. Like I said, 300 corruption. This build isn't that min-maxed yet, as I do have to do other builds this season. Now, with all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go work on the next build.